This video is brought to you by Memic, your organization's workers' compensation insurer. Memic is considered a leading innovator in workplace safety, in part because of its commitment to high-quality training programs. Preventing back injuries is a major workplace safety challenge. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, more than 1 million workers suffer back injuries each year, and back injuries account for 1 of every 5 workplace injuries or illnesses. 1/4 of all compensation indemnity claims involve back injuries, costing industry billions of dollars, not to mention the pain and suffering borne by workers. Lifting, placing, carrying, holding, and lowering are involved in manual materials handling, the principal cause of compensable work injuries. The Bureau of Labor Standards reports that 4 out of 5 of these injuries were to the lower back, and that 3 out of 4 occurred while lifting. This video discusses back injuries and highlights the steps you and your company can take to reduce the risk of developing one of these debilitating injuries. Most people associate back injuries with one single incident, such as a trip, slip, fall, or lifting a heavy object. In reality, a large majority of back injuries are caused by the accumulation of factors performed over an extended period of time. Some of the risk factors that lead to back injuries include poor posture, excessive body weight, improper body mechanics, excessive lifting, or repetitive bending. There are preventive measures you can take to reduce the chances of sustaining a back injury. The first step is an understanding of how your back works and how an injury can occur. The spine has 3 main functions: flexibility and stability, spinal cord protection, and cushioning or shock absorption. First, let's discuss flexibility and stability. The spine is made up of 24 movable bones or vertebrae. These vertebrae overlap each other to allow flexible movement of the back. Strong, inelastic ligaments connect each vertebrae and therefore provide stability to the spine. There are 3 continuous curves in the spine. There is an inward curve in the cervical or neck region, an outward curve in the thoracic or upper back region, and a second inward curve in the lumbar or lower back region. It is this natural inward curve of the lower back that must be maintained during lifting, pulling, or pushing, sitting, and walking. The second function of the spine is to provide protection for the spinal cord. This cord is likened to a cable of nerves. The thousands of nerve fibers in your spinal cord receive and send messages from your brain to initiate all functions of the body. This is a delicate and intricate system that receives bony protection from the vertebrae in your spine. The third function of your spine involves its ability to absorb shock that is created whenever we walk, run, or perform strenuous physical activity. Between each vertebrae, there lies a disc that acts like a cushion. These discs, or cushions, are made up of cartilage and are firmly attached to the vertebrae. The discs themselves do not slip from between the bones, but can become damaged when there is excessive wear and tear placed on them. Most of us have heard of someone injuring their back while bending over to pick up a piece of paper or a pen. Bending over incorrectly to pick up a light object puts nearly twice as much strain on your back as lifting a 40-pound object using proper technique. When using proper technique, the forces generated to lift the torso are minimized and effort required to lift the object optimized. To understand this better, let's look at how the muscles in our back function when we're bending forward from the waist. When bending from the waist, the muscles in your back are stretched out, putting them at a severe disadvantage and forcing them to work significantly harder to lift not only your own body weight, but also the object you're lifting. The heaviest thing most of us lift on a daily basis is our own body weight. Our torso makes up approximately 60% of our body weight. A 130-pound person bending over from the waist 10 times per day places approximately 8,600 pounds of additional force on the back. This cumulative repetitive stress placed on the muscles and ligaments of our backs leads to a high number of sprain-strain injuries and eventually leads to a serious disc injury. There are three common types of disc injuries: a bulging disc, a herniated disc, and a ruptured disc. A bulge in a disc occurs when there is a mild or a slight bulge within the disc wall as a result of normal wear and tear. In fact, at least 40% of Americans have a disc bulge, yet do not have symptoms. This is usually considered a normal finding as long as the bulge is not compressing a nerve, which can cause pain or numbness in the back or legs. A disc bulge that is large enough to come in contact with spinal nerves as they branch off the spinal cord is called a herniation. Herniations are caused by repeated lifts with a rounded back and/or twisting during a lift. This places a great deal of pressure on the nucleus, or jelly-like center of each disc. If the pressure becomes so intense so as to cause the disc material to break through the disc wall, it's called a rupture. A disc rupture is usually quite serious as it places pressure on the spinal nerve roots and could possibly result in permanent damage to those nerves that control movement and sensation. Disc ruptures in the lower back can cause continuous pain and numbness in the buttocks, groin, and legs, generally requiring surgery. Although the discs are the obvious shock absorbers, the primary shock absorbers are the three curves in the spine. Muscles support the back and are responsible for most of the work performed. The small, deep muscles of the back allow the torso to twist or rotate, while the outer, longer muscles allow the back to bend forward, backward, and side to side. Proper care of these postural muscles are the key to a healthy back. If you're overweight and your abdominal muscles are weak, additional stress is placed on your back. Another good reason to maintain good posture is to protect the discs while lifting. Lifting with the legs, raising the chest, and tilting the pelvis while lifting distributes the forces within the disc, thereby reducing stress placed on the back. When lifting by bending at the waist, heads of the vertebrae forces the nucleus of the disc towards the thinner back wall. This action weakens the disc and increases the risk of injury. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, has developed a formula to determine a recommended weight limit. According to NIOSH, it is safe for 99% of the male population and 75% of the female population to safely lift 51 pounds if the object is only 10 inches away from the body at the start of the lift, and if the object is 30 inches off the floor, and if the object does not have to be lifted or lowered more than 10 inches, and if there is no twisting during the lift, and if there are good handholds for the lift, and if the lift is performed no more than 12 times in 1 hour over an 8-hour day. Now let's look at all of these factors in greater detail. First, distance of the load from the body at the start of the lift. Additional force is required the farther an object is away from the body during a lift. Weight times distance equals force. Biomechanical analysis reveals that lifting a 10-pound object at full arm extension can require upwards of 300 pounds of force. To reduce the negative effects of lifting, get the object as close to the body as possible before lifting. This can be done by changing the grip point, sliding the object before lifting it, walking to the item instead of reaching, or tilting the item toward you. Look for ways to reduce the negative effect of lifting away from the body. Now let's consider the height of the hands at the start of the lift. The ideal height is 30 inches to maximize the upright posture. If the lift started at 12 inches, a forward bend would likely be performed. When lifting with a bent back, not only must the back lift the weight of the object, but also the weight of the torso, which is generally calculated at 60 to 65% of the person's body weight. A biomechanical analysis reveals that a 170-pound person lifting a 20-pound weight 30 inches from the body with a forward back posture generates over 1,100 pounds of compressive force in the lower back. Look for ways to get objects that require a manual lift off the floor. Keep in mind that the ideal lifting height of the hands at the start of the lift is 30 inches. Oftentimes, initial lifting height can be improved by using empty pallets, working directly off of forklifts or Q-tables. A good ergonomic principle to employ is once an object is at a good working height, keep it at that height. Don't lift an object to a bench, work on it, and then place it back on the floor for the next person to lift onto a bench. Now let's consider the distance an object is actually lifted or lowered. The further the vertical distance, the greater the force. When lifting objects above shoulder height, stress is placed on the shoulders and upper back. When lowering objects below mid-thigh level, bending from the waist is probable. Identify methods you can take to decrease the overall travel distance of the load. The next multiplier used in the NIOSH lifting equation is twisting. When twisting is performed during a lift, torsion and compressive forces are placed on the disc. This action dramatically increases the risk of injury. Instead of twisting, pivot. Better yet, design the job to require a step between the origin of lift and the destination. How you grasp the item to lift is also a key factor. Whenever possible, use a good power-tight grasp. When picking up an item, keep the wrist in a good neutral posture. This will dramatically reduce the amount of force required to make the lift. Finally, look at the frequency of lifting. Frequent lifts require higher energy demands and can lead to workers taking shortcuts. We oftentimes perform more lifts than what are required if basic product flow principles are followed. Analyze each lift and ask, why is this lift being performed? Does it have to be performed here? Historically, products are handled more times than are actually required. Eliminate unnecessary lifts. This will not only increase efficiencies, but also decrease risk for injury. Another aspect of manual material handling is pushing and pulling. It is generally better to push an object versus pulling because you can also incorporate your body weight. When pushing an object, the location of your hands is critical to reduce the force required. If your hands are too high or too low, the ability to generate required forces are hindered. Remember, put yourself at a biomechanical advantage. When pulling an object, short, steady steps backward should be used. Don't put yourself at risk of slipping by bending your body away from the load. Slip, trip, and fall injuries are usually the result of poor housekeeping. Make sure a good traction surface exists for walking. Inspect the area you will be traveling before performing a lift and/or carry action. Make sure the pathway is free of obstacles and slip hazards. Also, make sure any doors you'll be going through are open. Check the load you're going to be lifting for weight by rocking it back and forth. Is it too heavy for a one-person lift? If so, get help. Can the lift be performed mechanically? Always think before you lift. Visualize the lift in your mind. Where are you going to grab the item? Where are you lifting it to? What posture are you going to use? And do you need help? Let's look at a good lift. First, a diagonal lift. Squat with weight in front. Keep looking forward. Feet spread apart with one foot ahead of the other. Lead with your head and neck and keep the back upright throughout the lift. Keep weight close to the body. If you have to turn, move your feet. Never twist when lifting a load. Another lift is a power lift. This is used for heavy objects. Perform a partial squat with weight in front. Keep looking forward with feet positioned 1 foot in front or equal to each other. Next, let's look at the 3-point lift. This technique is good for lifting bags of product or heavier items. With one leg kneeling, lift the item and place on your stationary leg. Hug item to the body and stand up again, leading with your head and neck. The next technique is a golfer's lift. This lift should only be used for light objects. With one leg stretched out behind the torso, support the upper body on top of the box or other object and retrieve the item. The last technique is a partial squat. This is best for lifting with one hand and is often used on suitcases or buckets. With this lift, keep the torso in an upright position. Squat and lift the item using the strong leg muscles. Instead of carrying one extremely heavy load, try to decrease the weight and make additional trips. This will take a little extra time, but the load on your back will be decreased. Finally, let's look at the importance of exercise in maintaining a healthy back. A regimen of exercise is extremely important for all of us, especially those who perform difficult physical tasks throughout the work shift. Our bodies get used to the strenuous work we perform, but it's necessary to challenge our bodies by a regular routine of walking, running, biking, or other aerobic activity. Warming up your muscles is important before the start of a work shift. We know that 40% of all strain and sprain injuries occur during the first hour of the shift when the muscles are cold and inelastic. Use the techniques discussed in this video to help protect your back. Remember, it's the only one you'll ever have.